Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 22nd. We have a big show for you, as always. Every Friday, we obviously are going over our game picks for the weekend. NFL, college football. We've got 10 games in the slate that I've picked out for you today. Also, major news from around the rest of the world of sports. Obviously, earlier this morning, Daniel Jones out of New York, not just the backup third-string quarterback, officially released. He's going to clear waivers. We'll talk about where he might end up and what his future looks like, as well as the game from last night in a blizzard and MLB awards all wrapped up. We'll go through reactions with all of them. So make sure you stick around for that. But we're going to start off with Daniel Jones. Before we do, though, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 22nd. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show here with the biggest story of the day, the breaking news. The Giants have officially released Daniel Jones. He is cut. He is no longer a member of the Big Blue. And this honestly shocked me. I know there's been a lot of news surrounding Daniel Jones. It's been a very tumultuous week in the Giants organization because of this benching. And while I do agree with the benching, and while I do understand the logic of it, and while I see how much Daniel Jones cared about this organization and how much he really did enjoy it, and I'm glad that they gave him this cut, it honestly shocked me that it happened. There were ways to break it down. This isn't the cheapest way for the Giants to deal with this, right? And a lot of the reasons why the Giants ended up benching him at this point in the season rather than, just letting it ride with Daniel Jones to the end, like we all knew he wasn't going to come back. They decide to cut him now, and they decide to bench him because, that injury guarantee, the $23 million. They save $3 million. It's a $20 million dead cap hit against them for this season, for the rest of the year. And that is very considerate of them. This is a Giants organization that clearly meant a lot to Daniel Jones. You can see it in the way that the locker room reacted to his benching. Obviously, all the leaders of that team, Dexter Lawrence especially, one of the big voices from that room, from that team, came out and supported Daniel Jones. You see the way that they support him in the mic'd up clips whenever, he's out on the field despite his struggles, and his struggles are obvious. That's the reason he got cut. I don't think anybody is arguing with the reason he got cut. With the reason he got benched, at least. He was out there playing scout team safety, and as former backup quarterbacks have come out and testified on Twitter, Ben DiNucci is the first one that I saw do it. He went out there and he said, that's just how it goes. That's not a big deal. He went out there and he helped. He put out a statement to the media the day after the practice yesterday, and he wrote like a minute-long speech basically saying, thank you, means a lot to be a part of this organization. I really wanted to win, and you can tell he was being genuine. There's lots of times when athletes will go out there and they'll, not really mean what they say, but I believe what Daniel Jones was saying there. It's time to move on for both of them, and I think this is good for for the future of both Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. Obviously, from the New York Giants perspective of things, they weren't going to keep him, right? They moved on to Tommy Cutlets. They moved off of him. They're going to draft a quarterback this offseason in the draft, or at least go out and get a veteran that they think will come in and help them. They're moving off of Daniel Jones. So it's good to get it out there, really start that transition. For Daniel Jones, though, this is also a good move for him. And you can argue why it isn't, right? There's plenty of reasons why a move like this might not actually benefit Daniel Jones, but he gets the ability now to be a free agent. He's going to clear waivers. No one's going to pick up his $10 million contract right now. That's just not what's going to happen this season. He's going to go sign with a team for the veteran minimum. And there's a couple teams out there that I think would be really good for Daniel Jones. Obviously, you aren't looking at him to be a starter, right? He's a guy that hasn't performed well enough to be a starter, but as far as a backup, I would be more than happy to have Daniel Jones on my team as a backup. If you are a team at the top that doesn't feel comfortable in their backup, if you're a team like even the ones at the very top, the Lions, the Bills, the Chiefs, their backup quarterback situations aren't necessarily the greatest. You bring in a guy like Daniel Jones that can right the ship for you. You just tell him to keep it simple. Not a bad move at all. The 49ers have their own backup quarterback situation where you don't have really anyone that you trust behind Brock Purdy, and he's found himself on the injury report. So there's plenty of competitive teams out there that I think would maybe take a chance on a veteran minimum style Daniel Jones. As far as teams that might make him the starter right away, I'm not sure if that's the route that he wants to go, but maybe a team like Jacksonville wants to win a couple games. Maybe they go out and say, hey, he's going to be better than Mac Jones, which, for the record, I think he is better than Mac Jones. That's somewhere he could step in, get a couple of games under his belt to head into actual free agency. You also have the Raiders, the Cowboys, these teams here that are still at the bottom of the pack that maybe they think, hey, Daniel Jones is better than Gardner Minshew. I know Antonio Pierce wants to save his job, and the Raiders don't feel like they're a bottom-tier team like they kind of are. Maybe they think Daniel Jones can come in and make that team better. The Cowboys, obviously, this would be a rental. I doubt the Cowboys end up signing Daniel Jones, but maybe they feel like they can fix him. There's a couple of teams out there that I would not be shocked if Daniel Jones found a home on pretty quickly. But if we're actually looking into the future, years into the future for Daniel Jones, he will find a place. He will find a home. It won't be with the Giants, and it won't be as a starter. He's going to be a career backup right now. He's probably going to end up as a journeyman kind of guy, kind of following, I heard Teddy Bridgewater as a good comparison. And I think that is a very good comparison for what his career might end up as. He'll have a couple stints out there where he can show it, where he shows his flashes like he did when he was with the Giants. After he signed that contract extension, he was 3-13. That was his total record, 3-13. And that's not good, and it showed. He was not very good. But in two of those games, we saw it against the Seahawks this year. We saw it against the Cardinals last year, right? And I know not the greatest defenses to show it against, but he has at least one game a year in him where he can come out and he can show you why he was that 6th overall pick in the draft, why he has that talent. He's never done it consistently, which is what has led him to the point that he's at now, no longer on a team in week 12 of the season. I do think he's a guy that will undoubtedly get a job. I do think he's a guy that will 100% find a spot in the NFL as a backup somewhere and maybe eventually claw himself back to a starter. I doubt it, but maybe he will. But let me know what you think. Where do you think Daniel Jones ends up? What do you think about this move? I think it was classy for the Giants to release him. It was time. He asked for a release. He got his release. I think that was good of the Giants organization to do. Love to hear your thoughts on this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the Thursday night football game, a blizzard game, a snow game. We barely get to see any of those anymore. It was a lot of fun to watch, very pretty to see on TV. We'll talk about the actual gameplay in it, our big takeaways from it on Sports Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I'll make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I'll blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't no place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 22nd. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the breaking news of the day. Daniel Jones, no longer a member of the Giants, officially released today. Will clear waivers. No team should sign him before then. Then he'll find a place, probably as a backup on a contender this season. In this segment, we turn our attention to the Thursday night football action. The Cleveland Browns took care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers 24-19 in a blizzard, a snow game, a perfect encapsulation of AFC North football. It was beautiful to watch. We'll talk about all of that, everything that happened in the game. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 22nd. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the Thursday night football action of last night. The Browns get the best of the Steelers in a blizzard. A blizzard is what it was. It started off as flurries at the beginning of the game. It just kept getting heavier and heavier until eventually, in the middle of the third quarter, the field started getting covered in snow. That, coincidentally, is when the fireworks on offense started. This was the most AFC North game I have seen in a very long time, and it was beautiful. It was a great game to watch. It really was. Snow games are a treat every single time. You never know what you're going to get. It didn't really hamper the ability of especially the Browns to pass the ball. Jameis Winston finishes with 216 yards through the air, which might not sound like anything great, but it's better than anything that Deshaun Watson did all season long, right? He goes out there, he puts on a performance in a game that they needed to win, a game that the Steelers also kind of needed to win when you take a look at their schedule, and I hate to do that. We've done that all season long, right? Oh, they haven't beaten anybody. Wait till they get into the gauntlet of their schedule, but they kind of needed that win a lot. They kind of got the Baltimore Ravens off of their tail a little bit, and if they were able to beat the Cleveland Browns, a team that similarly also beat the Ravens, they were going to kind of have a stranglehold on that division. Or at least it would be very helpful, because then, when they play the Ravens later, they would still potentially have an extra game on them at that point. This was just a game that didn't go right? You had in the first quarter no points on the board. Nick Chubb gets into the end zone to open up the scoring for the Browns after a missed field goal from Chris Boswell, a couple turnovers, but the real thing that really changed the trajectory of this game was the fourth down conversions of the Browns. The Browns were perfect on fourth downs. They were 4 of 4 on them. And in fact, you take a look at this game, 24-19, you expect a lot of punts. There were only 3 punts in this game, and 2 of them were shanked. The Steelers only punted once. The Browns only punted twice. This was a game of fourth down conversions, interceptions, turnovers on downs, missed field goals, missed opportunities. It was an AFC North game to its finest. Nick Chubb, not great efficiency against a very staunch Pittsburgh Steelers defense. He got into the end zone twice, one to put the game away at the end. I really liked the way that the Steelers were using Justin Fields. I love the idea of using both of those quarterbacks in different packages, and I want to see them kind of, let Justin Fields throw it a little more. He's kind of being used as that change of pace quarterback, which is kind of a crazy thing to say right there. He's a great runner, and we've seen it. When he's out there, the run game goes different because they can't just attack the running back in those RPOs. that quarterback run, it was really effective for Justin Fields in this game, especially in that second half when the snow started really going. There were a couple of iffy calls. He threw the ball twice. It was both times were incomplete. I liked the idea. He was taking his chances, throwing it up to George Pickens, who had a little bit of a slow game. Someone that I expected to have a big game this week in George Pickens didn't really do that much. But Russell Wilson also didn't have his best game. He did fine when he was needed to. He stepped up, but at the end of the day, this is a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that when they continue to play teams close, let them in the game. When you go up against a division rival, it's going to come and bite you in the butt sometimes. And we saw that. The kickers obviously were not trusted in this game. They didn't really kick a single time after the snow really started falling, right? I know you had a Chris Boswell field goal in there, but the Browns did not bring their kicker out once. There were 2-point conversion after 2-point conversion, and it was a fun game to watch. It was very entertaining AFC North football. The Steelers were just not quite able to get it done. And again, you take a look at the rest of that schedule. You have, after this game, the Bengals on the road, the Browns again, at the Eagles, at the Ravens, hosting the Chiefs, and then hosting the Bengals. There's not an easy win in any of those. You can maybe talk about those division games as being easier as than the Eagles and the Chiefs, but it's not going to be easy. It's a division game, and as we just saw this week against the Browns, especially in the AFC North, anything can happen in those division games. You can never just count those as easy wins. Excuse me. Outside of the future for the Steelers here, Jameis Winston showed me a lot. He went out there and he had a really good and efficient game. He got hit a lot, so did Russell Wilson. He got hit more times than I've seen most quarterbacks get hit all season. But Jameis Winston came out there in the snow. He was unbothered by it, did end up throwing a bad interception. It looked like on further review, just a miscommunication with which way the receiver would turn off of his break on a curl route. He thought he was going to cut outside, receiver cut inside, threw an interception right there. It did not end up mattering. The Cleveland Browns defense really stepped up, really held their ground when they needed to, and I was very impressed by this Cleveland Browns performance. The fans showed up, they let the Steelers hear it in the dog pound, and they just won this game with their fanhood. It was a lot of fun to watch. Big fan of the snow games. I wish we get a couple more of those. It was a lot of fun. But let me know what you thought of this game. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to NFL game picks. We still have all of the other games to go over. We will pick games, give you a correct score coming up on all of them. So make sure you stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 22nd. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the Thursday night football game that saw the Steelers lose to the Browns in a blizzard, 24-19. In this segment, we turn our attention to game picks. Week 12 is already here. I can't believe we're almost done with the season already, but we do have to pick all the games. We got scores for you, we got predictions, we got matchup breakdowns. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 22nd. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our NFL game picks here for Week 12. Starting off in New York, the Giants with new starter Tommy DeVito host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, and a now healthy Mike Evans. Mike Evans is going to be the X factor in this game. He's coming back. He is going to go off in the second half of the year. He needs 665 yards to get to that 1,000-yard mark in the next 7 games. He's probably going to do that. I bet you he'll get 100 yards a game, finish with about 1,100 yards on the season, and this is going to be a start. He gets matched up with a Giant secondary that, while it hasn't been the worst in the league, it also has been nowhere near good enough to slow down a guy like Mike Evans. On the offensive side for the Giants, you have Tommy DeVito in at quarterback, a guy that I don't love, and against a Tampa Bay defense that admittedly has been playing better of late, I just don't think that there's a way that the Giants find a way to win. I think Tyrone Tracy has a big game. I think Mike Evans goes absolutely nuclear, potential wide receiver 1 in fantasy this week. 2 touchdowns, 150 yards, something along those lines is what I'm expecting out of him. I think Tampa Bay wins this one pretty easily. They're favored by 6. I think they win by 14, 28-14. Up next, the Kansas City Chiefs travel to the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers, a 2-game win streak, their longest win streak in 2 years. Kansas City coming off of their longest losing streak in almost a year. Just 1 game. They play a Carolina Panthers defense that is just not going to be able to stand up very well to the Kansas City Chiefs. Kareem Hunt will be the starter at running back. Isaiah Pacheco out 1 more week. It looked like he might be back for this one. Expect him to come back against the Raiders next week. As for Carolina, their job is to not get laughed out of the building right now. You're playing a Chiefs team that's motivated after a loss. Patrick Mahomes and that offense should go insane, and I think the Chiefs destroy them 37-17. The Dallas Cowboys travel to Washington to take on Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. This is a rivalry game, and it's one that should be good. Again, division matchups always go crazy. You never know what's going to happen, but the way that Dallas offense has been playing without Dak Prescott has been very concerning. The defense continues their worrying ways as well, and this is going to be treated as a get-right game for Jaden Daniels, a quarterback that struggled down the stretch here for the Washington Commanders. He's dealing with a rib injury. He gets like a pseudo-bye week after playing on Thursday Night Football, gets a couple extra days to rest. Hopefully that helps them. I'm not sure how healthy he's going to be, but I do think Washington, with the ground attack of Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, should be able to take advantage of a very poor run defense from the Dallas Cowboys, and that's going to push them over the top. 10.5 is a lot of points. I think Washington gets the win, but I think Dallas finds a way to keep it just a little bit closer than that. Washington wins 30-21. Another division matchup, this time in the AFC East, as the New England Patriots travel to Miami, Florida to take on the Dolphins. The Dolphins favored by 7.5 in this one, and the Dolphins are getting hot. Don't look now. The Patriots, a team that under Drake May has been able to keep it close these last couple of weeks, only losing by 6 to a Rams team that I think is very similar to the Dolphins, although the Dolphins were able to beat that same Rams team just a week earlier. This is going to be a fun matchup. Again, divisions, you never know what's going to happen, but with the heater that Miami's been on, the way that defense has been playing of late, I think the Miami Dolphins continue to roll here. They get a big win over Drake May and the New England Patriots, a much-needed win for them. They take this game 31-20. The Tennessee Titans take on the Houston Texans, yet another division matchup. right? There's been a lot of division matchup this week, so lots of big spreads. This one also over a touchdown at 7.5 in favor of Houston. The Texans coming off of a huge win in the Battle of Texas against Jerry Jones and those Dallas Cowboys on Monday Night Football. They get Nico Collins back, and I think Nico Collins is going to feast against Titans defense that has just put L'Jarius Sneed on the IR, ending his season. He hasn't been healthy for most of the season, but that is a huge blow for them. And I think Joe Mixon, Nico Collins being back on this team, this is going to be a game where we kind of see them get right. I think Houston gets a big win over Tennessee, 27-17. The Detroit Lions favored by 7 points as they travel to take on Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts come off of a huge win, potentially Anthony Richardson's best game in his entire career, his young career so far. He responded well to getting benched. I think he's going to continue to play good football, but that Detroit team is a juggernaut. Against a Colts defense that is the worst rush defense in the league, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to absolutely feast this week against them, and I expect another big win. Maybe not another 50-point game, but they should put up lots of points. They win 34-20. Minnesota, the Vikings, who have come in kind of struggling. 2 wins against 2 bad teams, but not very consistent, not very impressive victories against the Jags and the Titans. They now take on the Bears, a Bears team that just lost in the most demoralizing way you possibly can. They've had 2 of those games now. I'm not sure what's left of this team as far as morale, and I think that's what's going to end up sinking the Bears. It's a 3.5-point spread in favor of the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not convinced about Sam Darnold, and I expect this game to be the lowest scoring game of the entire week. Both of these defenses are really, really good and have been the heart and soul, have been the thing that keeps these teams afloat, or as much afloat as they can be in the Bears' case. This game should be a fun defensive battle. Again, kind of sounds like NFC North football. It should be fun. In Chicago, I'm going to keep this a close game. I just can't pick the Bears with how depleted they are mentally right now. I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings to win 20-17. Denver travels to Vegas to take on the Raiders. They come off of an emphatic win against the Atlanta Falcons, a huge win for that program, and Bo Nix showing that he's really there. That was his first really great game of his career. Let's see if he can do it again against a similarly poor defense in Vegas, a team that just let Jonnu Smith go crazy on them. This is going to be a tough week for Vegas. I'm not sure if Denver can do what they did twice in a row. I do think they are a much better team than Vegas is, and I think they should dominate, especially with that defense locking down Brock Bowers. That's going to be the big thing, and I'm not worried about them doing it. Denver wins 30-14. San Francisco travels to Green Bay to take on the Packers, and breaking news out of this game here, Brock Purdy officially out. Brendan Allen is now the starter over there in San Francisco. That's not a good sign. At that first part, when I was prepping for the show, when I was prepping for this segment, I had a final score prediction of 24-25 with Green Bay winning. Now with Brandon Allen in there, I can't imagine that this game goes very well for this 49ers. It's going to give you a heavy, heavy dose of Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. I believe they're going to air it out still, but I think it's going to be a lot less through the passing game, a lot more focused on the run, and I think this Packers defense is going to be good enough to stop it. They were able to slow down Montgomery and Gibbs in that Lions game. This is a big week for them, and I think Green Bay, because of that quarterback switch, takes care of things pretty easily. Green Bay wins, favored by 3. I'm sure that line's changing now that news came out, but I think Green Bay takes this one. I think they win, again, pretty easily, 17-24. Arizona travels to Seattle, and this one could honestly be the game of the week. You have a Cardinals team that is red hot, coming off of a bye, taking on a Seattle team on the road in Seattle that just beat the San Francisco 49ers in that building. Geno Smith is a guy that will make some mistakes, and this is an Arizona Cardinals defense that has not allowed a touchdown in 3 of its last 4 games. That is a crazy stat to me. That is showing how much better this defense is, how much it has improved from the beginning of this season, when they were getting blown out by the Packers. This is a team in Arizona that I think is finding its stride, and the inconsistency of Seattle's defense and their offense, for that matter, I think is going to be what does them in. I'm taking Arizona to win this game 33-21. Sunday Night Football. The Philadelphia Eagles, favored by 3, travel to LA, cross-country trip to take on the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford has been on a tear right now. He has his 2 top weapons back, and seeing those 2 on the field together is going to be a nightmare for a Philadelphia secondary that is much improved. One of the best secondaries in the last month in all of football. The 2 rookies showing up, showing out. They know what needs to be done. They're doing an incredible job right now. And this is going to be a tight game, right? What this is going to come down to is whether or not that offensive line of Philadelphia can deal with the young stars on the defensive line. Because both of these offenses are going to eat. There's nothing that's going to stop these 2 offenses from getting into the end zone a couple times. I do think I'm going to lean on the upset in this. Philly favored by 3 on the road. I'm leaning towards the Rams to win this one, not just because they're at home, but also because I really do think that this is Rams defense that is going to at least be able to bottle up the Eagles a little bit. Should be a tight one, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went either way. I think the Rams win this one 28-27. And the final game of the week, the Harbaugh Bowl on Monday Night Football. The Ravens travel to the Chargers. Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. We saw this in a Super Bowl one time. I think this game goes very similar to that. This should be an offensive show. We saw what happens to that Chargers defense when an elite offense comes through, a defense that was playing really good against lesser opponents. But this is a Baltimore team that they can run the ball, and they will run through and around this Chargers defense that has done a really great job this season. The Chargers have found their stride offensively as well, and I think Justin Herbert and that offense will have a huge game. I think this might be the highest scoring game of the week. I think Baltimore finds a way to dig it out. Favored by 3 on Monday. They win 34-30. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these games. We'll obviously talk more about the Monday Night Football game on Monday. But thank you, everybody. We'll be right back. In our next segment, we turn our attention to college football. College football this week, it's got a couple of massive games, bunch of massive implications, but there aren't too many great games this week. I picked out 10. We're going through the top 10 games this week, in my opinion. We'll pick all of those coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 22nd. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over our NFL game picks for this weekend. In this segment, we turn our attention to college football. Another crazy Saturday of action, definitely bound to be one of the better ones this year. It seems like a boring weekend, which means chaos is going to reign supreme, and I cannot wait to see what happens. You obviously have the big games, Army, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ohio State, and a couple of other ranked matchups as well. And we'll break all those down, but there's a couple of other games that I picked that we should go over as well. We'll get into them in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or If you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 22nd. But like I was saying, in this segment, we turn our attention over to college football. Week 13 already upon us, and we have some of the biggest games of the entire college football season. We're going to start off with one tonight, as UNLV, looking to find a way into the Mountain West title game, ranked number 24 in the most recent college football playoff poll, a very good team over there, takes on San Jose State, a team that just gave some troubles to Boise State, the highest-ranked Group of 5 program. Boise State was able to pull away late, but don't sleep on this San Jose State team, especially at home. This is a team that will give you trouble and has played tough against a lot of really good opponents this year. UNLV favored by 7.5, and I think that offensive firepower is going to be just enough. I'm a little concerned about the UNLV defense. They've been able to give up points a little bit there, but I'm taking UNLV in their upside here. 7.5 points. I think they win by 11, 31-20. Then an intriguing game here. This is a line that's flipped back and forth as we head into Saturday's action. Number 25, Illinois, a team that I don't really feel like deserves to be ranked, takes on the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Rutgers claimed a spot in the bowl game last week. Illinois has been flirting with the edge of the college football playoff rankings and the AP poll rankings basically all season long. They've won a couple big games, lost a couple big games, and now they play a Rutgers team in Piscataway, New Jersey, where originally they were favored by 1 point, but now the line is switched. Rutgers is favored by 1 at home. This game is going to be a really interesting one, right? It's going to be a good Big Ten battle that doesn't really have that much playoff implication. Rutgers, a team that's already having a really good season. They're looking to build on it, add a little bit to their resume here as they prepare to get some recruits this season. And Illinois already had a couple of great seasons piled up in a row. This would be a great win to add to their resume as well. I think these two teams are very similar, so I do think it's going to be very close. But I think being at home, Rutgers has a little bit of an advantage. Kyle Monungai should have a huge game on the ground if he's able to go. I know he played last week, but he'd been dealing with a little bit of an injury. I think Rutgers finds a way to win this one, though, 28-26. The game of the week at 12 o'clock. The number 5 Indiana Hoosiers travel to the Shoe to take on number 2 Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 11 points in this one. That is so many points. I for sure am taking Indiana plus 11. I think that's a little bit disrespectful. I think there's a better chance than not that Indiana finds a way to win this game. This is the game with the most playoff the most or second most playoff implications on the line here. Obviously, these are both really good teams. I think a lot of the hate that's been put on Indiana from specifically the SEC side of things is not really that fair. They've been dominating their opponents. They're very comparable to Georgia from last season that ended up missing the playoffs by 1 spot. That's kind of where they stand right now. They take on the biggest and maybe the only real test of their season in Ohio State. On the road, it's not going to be easy. And I'm going with the chaos route. This is not a crazy stacked week of college football. Chaos is bound to ensue somewhere. I'm taking Indiana to win this game. I think Indiana finds a way to go on the road, beat Ohio State, a team that's kind of been prone to a little bit of a couple slow starts. Indiana, if they're able to start early, can throw their rhythm off, maybe get a little confidence. I think Indiana and Curt Cignetti find a way to win this game, 34-28. Ole Miss travels to Florida. DJ Lagway has been playing incredible football in the last couple weeks, since he got hurt against these really great SEC opponents. They pushed Texas. If DJ Lagway was in that game, I think that game against Texas is a lot closer than it was. Last week against LSU, they end up upsetting them. The week before, they push a really good they push a really good Georgia team to the brink, right? This is a Florida team that's hot right now. DJ Lagway is playing incredible football, and Ole Miss arguably playing the best football in the entire nation. This is going to be a tough game. If Ole Miss doesn't start fast, if they let the Florida Gators hang around, there's a real shot for an upset here. Ole Miss favored by 12.5. I think that's way too many points. I think the Gators find a way to keep it close, but I think at the end of the day, Ole Miss doesn't let an upset get pulled off. I think Ole Miss wins 30-20. Penn State travels to Minnesota, a Golden Gophers team that has been red hot as of recent. They just drop a game, kind of inexplicably, to Rutgers. They just drop a game pretty badly. It didn't look that great for them. Penn State favored by 11.5. They've been a juggernaut against these kind of teams, these middle of the pack kind of teams right here, and I think they find a way to win again, but 11.5 is a lot of points, especially traveling up to Minnesota, playing there on the road. It's not going to be easy. We kind of saw it last week when Oregon traveled to Wisconsin. Not the same teams, not the same environment, but I think it goes a very similar way where they find a way to win at the end, but it's not going to be very comfortable. Penn State wins 28-21. Another contender for game of the week, as number 14 BYU, with their playoff hopes dangling right now by a thread, takes on number 21 Arizona State. Favored by 3, Arizona State is at home. They come off a huge win against a really good Kansas State team. They dominate that game. This is an Arizona State squad that I think deserves to be ranked a little bit higher. There's a lot of things you can say about Arizona State, where they deserve to be, but really, they have been playing spoiler for a lot of teams in the Big 12. Them and Kansas have been playing spoiler, but Arizona State controls their own destiny to the college football playoffs. They win out, they are most likely in. At least they control their own destiny to the Big 12 title game. How much love the committee is going to give to an Arizona State team that isn't a big name program if they find a way to win the Big 12, I'm not so sure about, but they get one of their biggest tests against a BYU team that just lost a heartbreaker to Kansas last week, a team that just lost by getting hit on the helmet on a pooch punt by the opposing quarterback. BYU comes in limping. They haven't really played their best football down the stretch. I'm taking Arizona State in this one. Arizona State is determined. They've got great coaching, and I think they find a way to pull this one off at home, 31-27. Then, again, the Big 12 continues to give us great games as number 16 Colorado travels to Kansas to take on the Jayhawks. The Jayhawks, who started off the year ranked, they have been playing great. They take down Iowa State. They take down BYU. Now they get Colorado, a game where Colorado's only favored by 3, and this is going to be a great matchup. This one should go down to the wire right now. So Kansas needs to win out to make a bowl game. They got to 1-6 on the year. They are now they're now 4-6 on the year. 2 more games to go. They've got to win out, and I think they've got a real shot to do it. Again, we talk about the hottest teams in the entire country. Kansas might be one of them. They have run the gauntlet right now. That's 2 straight ranked wins for them, looking to make it 3 straight ranked wins. They beat Kansas State. They beat BYU. Now they get a chance to take on a really good Colorado team. This is going to be a fun game to watch. I think I'm leaning towards Kansas in this one. Jalen Daniels, the way that he has been able to play, the way that he's been able to control the line of scrimmage and not turn the ball over, that's what this Kansas team needed. If they can play clean football, they win games. Point blank, period. That's just how it goes. I think the matchups are looking really good for a team in Kansas that likes to run the ball down your throat. I'm taking Kansas to win this one at home, 26-23. Got a couple more games just to throw in you. A huge game in the CUSA for potentially a chance at the CUSA title. Sam Houston, a second-year program in the FBS, taking on Jacksonville State. I think Jacksonville State is just simply the better team. They win this one 20-30. And finally, another Big 10 matchup here. We have Wisconsin taking on Nebraska. The winner of this game is going to be bowl eligible. The loser of this game is not. That is how big this game is for them. This is a huge game for both of these programs. the way that Nebraska's been playing, they seemingly find a way to go 6-6 every year, and this is their chance to do it. But Wisconsin, coming off of all that momentum, they go on the road this time. If this was in Camp Randall, I think Wisconsin wins this game pretty easily. Not too much discussion about it, but they traveled to Nebraska. Nebraska favored by 1 point in this one. I'm taking Wisconsin. I think they win 24-22. We saw what they were able to do, slow down the offense of Oregon. Nebraska's just not been playing that great of football down the stretch here. I'm taking Wisconsin. Should be a fun weekend of football. Let me know if there's any games I missed. Which games are you looking forward to the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the MLB announced its its awards earlier today, or earlier this week. We have all the awards out. We'll go over all of them, who won, who got snubbed. We'll talk about that coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Friday, November 22nd. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the college football and NFL game picks for this weekend. A very intriguing week in college football and the NFL. Lots of divisional matchups, lots of super important playoff games this week as well. In this segment, we are going to close off our show talking about MLB awards. The MLB season might be over, but the awards have just come out. NL, AL awards, MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, and much more came out earlier this week. We'll break down all of those in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday, November 22nd. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show here today in the MLB. The awards have come out, and we're going to start off with the Manager of the Year. This one I didn't have too many issues with. Stephen Vogt and Pat Murphy of the Cleveland Guardians and the Milwaukee Bucks win in the AL and the NL respectively. What they did in both of those Midwest cities really was impressive. You obviously saw the Cleveland Guardians make a little bit of a run there in the playoffs. Guardians all got a good amount of awards this year as far as the Big Four. Milwaukee, there wasn't really a great manager out there in the NL that kind of stuck out. What he was able to do in a really big transition year for the Milwaukee Brewers, keeping them head and shoulders above the rest of that division basically the whole year, was a huge improvement. So I like both of these picks. As far as Rookie of the Year goes, Paul Skeens for the NL was far and away going to be the NL Rookie of the Year. There were a couple other guys that tried to throw their hat in the rings, but when you have a guy in Paul Skeens that was also not just up for Rookie of the Year, but a finalist for NL Cy Young, a guy that didn't pitch that much, probably the reason why he didn't end up winning the NL Cy Young, but he absolutely deserved the NL Rookie of the Year. The second he got up into the majors, he was arguably the best pitcher in the entire league. That's how special he is. He is going to be great for the Pirates for a very, very long time, and I cannot wait to see what he does in the future. He had another pitcher win Rookie of the Year for the AL. Luis Gil started off the season one of the better pitchers in the AL, was in legitimate conversations for that Cy Young spot, kind of slowed down the stretch there, but there weren't really any great rookies to come out of the AL. You can talk about Wyatt Langford. He had a bit of an up and down season for the Texas Rangers this year. He was the one that came in second place behind Luis Gil, but Gil, I think, was clear and away the favorite for Rookie of the Year in the AL, and I think they gave it to the right guys. Now, Cy Young is a little bit of an interesting discussion, right? Again, in the AL, Tariq Skubal of the Detroit Tigers ran away with this award. He led the league in ERA, in strikeouts. This was a guy that was the best pitcher in baseball this year. There's no doubt about it. Chris Sale for the Atlanta Braves wins from the NL. Again, he was a dominant force. There weren't a lot of really big debates this year for a lot of these awards, which is kind of rare to see. Generally, there's a couple of things that you look at and you say, maybe not, maybe there was a snub here, but I thought overall the awards were very easy to pick this year. There were kind of clear-cut guys, favorites that you would be shocked if they didn't get the award. Chris Sale comes over for nothing to Atlanta. We all kind of saw this coming, right? He was going to revive his career, win another Cy Young. He gets hurt down the stretch, which hurts, but it was really cool to see the race. Paul Skeens made it close at the end with a couple of not that great starts from Chris Sale, but the way he started kind of separated him from the pack, and no one was going to catch him. But then we get to the MVPs. We have in the NL, Shohei Ohtani, and Shohei Ohtani absolutely deserved it. There were discussions by me, by a couple of other people, talking about Francisco Lindor, but at the end of the day, unanimously, Shohei Ohtani wins the NL MVP. He's now just the second player ever to win the MVP in both the AL and the NL. Not an easy thing to do. He is the best player of the generation right now, and you can argue he's the best player. You can argue he's one of the best players of all time. And I don't think you'll get laughed out of the room. What he's been able to do for the sport of baseball, for two-way players, you're starting to see the rise of a couple of them. Obviously, none of them can do it to the level that Shohei is, but he is incredible. The first DH to ever win the award, the MVP award, in the history of baseball, it was unanimous, as well as the AL MVP, also unanimous. For the first time ever, 2 years in a row, both the AL and the NL MVP have been unanimous. In the AL, it was a fun race, right? Aaron Judge wins his second MVP. He is really good at baseball, right? And he kind of ran away with it. He had a better season than he did when he won his MVP the first time, but there was a guy behind him in Bobby Witt that I think at least should have deserved a little bit more consideration. Bobby Witt was the second best player in the AL by leaps and bounds, and he was the only one even within striking distance of Aaron Judge all season. Plays for the Royals. He doesn't get all that same kind of media attention that Aaron Judge gets with the Yankees. And Juan Soto came in third. That is a Yankees lineup that you saw how good it is. They made the World Series. Didn't end up mattering at the end because they could not get across the finish line. But Bobby Witt, I think, deserves a lot of love. It's not like he got snubbed. Aaron Judge deserved to win the award. But the fact that he just kind of gets left out of a lot of these discussions because of how dominant these two are, in just about any other season, if Bobby Witt had put up the numbers that he did, he would be lifting that MVP award. Hopefully he gets another season like this. Hopefully he gets an MVP award because God knows that kid deserves it. Bobby Witt, incredible baseball player. He is so much fun to watch, and the Royals have a bright future ahead of them in their young stars over there. But let me know what you think of the MLB awards. It was kind of boring because you had unanimous votes on a lot of these. Thought they did a good job. I thought it was pretty obvious. I'm glad they didn't mess it up. Baseball writers have a tendency to make it up. But thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Hope everybody has a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday talking all things that happened this weekend. NFL, college football, winners and losers. I cannot wait to see you then. Hope you have a great weekend, I'll see you on Monday. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired.